Hey, folks, welcome back to My Imperfect Pursuits. I am Carrie Irvin, and today I am recording episode 49. And just saying that, I can't believe it because that means I'm about to hit 50 episodes, 50 episodes on a podcast that I never ever thought was going to be in my life. And yet here I am. It's about to hit 50. So, it's kind of a, was that golden? That's like gold. Like I'm looking over like somebody's over here, golden anniversary, whatever. But what the heck? Like I never thought I'd be here. So isn't life crazy wonderful? It is. So with all that aside, I want to go ahead. I want to dive into today's episode because let me tell you, I'm going to back up a little bit. I voice messaged, I texted lots of friends and family, asking them this question, as well as on Instagram and Facebook. So if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook and you're like, oh, wait, it's in my stories, you can go and still go answer it because I still want to collect people's answers, um, as far as like what they feel about this. And so what I was asking was essentially what are the effects that naysayers in their life have had on them? And I got really, really good feedback. I got so many people messaging me back. And what's funny, I even one of my friends, Patty, we were messaging and she was kind of the first one to respond. But what was interesting is her response was very similar to people were like, let me think about that. A lot of people text, let me think about that and get back to you on that because it does take some thought. Like and by naysayers, it can be a season in your life of naysayers. It can be naysayers that have been in your life for a long time, people that really you have no choice that they're in your life, that kind of thing, or people that you did have a choice. So, whatever, whoever it might be, we all know the naysayers in our life. What effects did those naysayers and their pessimistic attitudes have on us? So, I'm going to kind of go over, I've gone through the results and kind of typed it out and looked over it. So I had several people tell me that when people tell them that they can't do something or that person has a very pessimistic attitude towards one of their goals or dreams, like if you're putting your goal or your dream out there, just something that you're wanting to do, and then when that person is very pessimistic towards it, that I've had several people say, well, it drives them to go after that goal with that much more resolve. One person even shared with me, a family member shared with me that he was going to, he wanted to build his own computer, or really a computer for his son. And the reason he wanted to do it is because he compared all the computer prices and he was like, oh my goodness, like the kind of computer I want, I could build something that would be better than what I could get for the price. Like, so he was determined to build this computer for his son. And he said he had several family members, not so sure about it because he had never done it. So it wasn't like they were just, trying to be negative for negative sake. It was more so like, but you've never done this. Can you do it? Just kind of casting some doubts out there. And we've all been there. We've all been the people casting doubts. I'm not trying to point fingers here, but what he said was, they doubted his ability to do it, but as he said, and I'm gonna quote, he said, "At least" he thought to himself, "Well, at least one person with less experience and a lower IQ than me has successfully built a computer before. So I know I can do this." So he had to kind of go into himself, talk himself up to do it. So he did it. He involved his son in the process. He said, we watched YouTube videos and then they finished building the computer. And he said it was a great bonding experience for him and his son. And it taught himself a lesson as well as his son. Another response, that I got, oh, and backing up to that, I had some other people talk about, I can't stand, I loathe naysayers. So when someone comes in and tries to tell me I can't do something, it does something within me. It makes me want to work that much harder at it. And so that was interesting too, to see, how it affects people differently. So another response was that I got was, someone I know when they were going to nursing school, and they were told that because of their age of being in nursing school, they were 44 at the time, and their lack of prior college or medical experience that they wouldn't be able to transition into the critical thinking skills that are required to be a nurse. It's just not going to happen because you don't have any college experience, prior college experience, and your age, all those things. So she said she let doubt creep in, and she said she was terrified. She became terrified of failure after that conversation with the person who was over her, the person who was kind of like supposed to watch the program for the nurses, the people trying to be nurses. This is the person who said this to her. And so she let doubt creep in. She was terrified of failure after that conversation. And she said she even created a backup plan just in case she didn't pass because the fear became for her so real that, oh, I guess it's just not going to happen. I need to have a backup in case I don't pass the required nursing exams. What am I going to do? However, after all the doubt and all the things, and she still worked really hard, she aced her final exams that were needed to become a registered nurse. So she said she never forgot that lesson, though, and how she let the doubt creep in. She let that lady speak all that into her. Even though the lady has free will, she let it happen. Now, some other responses that I got were they said when people would poke holes into their plans, when you're trying to tell somebody your plans or your dreams or your goals and people just poke holes into it, that you become frustrated. They noticed they were becoming frustrated and then even like, why do these people feel a need to poke holes in my plans? I'm sharing something with you. It's something I thought was a good thing. And it's just turning into, you're not going to do it. How are you going to do this? All the things that come with that when we say somebody's poking holes into their plans. So they become very frustrated and just what is the need to do that? They said, I share my plans because I'm excited and I'm happy to be doing something that I set my heart on. And then the confusion sets in when people begin to poke holes in their plan, talk doubts over them, and they wrote these words, texted me these words, tear them down. You know. So I had another friend message back and stated, that she noticed, and, as my friend Casey, and she said I could use her name. Crazy Casey, whatever, crazy Casey, you're not crazy. But she said that, she noticed that as she has gotten older, that she's observed how she has let doubt creep in more. She said that when she was younger, she used to people would try to be like, "You can't do that," or, whatever. She's like, "You know what? Watch me." But she's noticed that lately, she has let their negativity maybe and, quote unquote, reach too far to the point where she feels like she isn't good enough. She let it go too far. And then she started to feel that she wasn't good enough. But then she also came back saying that, but I've also seen that side of me that comes back from that as well. So that could be a season in her life. Another friend said something very similar to that, that when she begins to question that I'm not enough, that she knows that the enemy is using, you know, the other person's words or decisions that were made to begin that will makes her begin to question her own value. And then she also said, I also notice how this spills over into other areas of my life. Even though maybe I have a lot of doubts about work or where I'm going to go with my job, all the goals I have for it, and it's just not happening, all those doubts start to creep into other areas of my life. And then I have another friend who's also a life coach, and my friend Shauna. She stated that before she became a life coach, she really noticed that she would let the doubt get in her head all the time. When people would say something, it just got into her head and it took some work to get it out. So, another point, though, that was brought up by somebody else brought it up to me that it depends on who is saying it to you. If it's a stranger or an acquaintance or somebody that you're just not really that personally connected to, you just kind of maybe it can roll off your shoulders a little bit easier. However, if it's a friend, if it's a family member, if it's a romantic interest or somebody you're dating or a spouse or whatever, it will cut deeper, right? And you know that's kind of known that our family and friends can cut the deepest wounds within us because they are that much closer. And that how pessimism, I don't know if you hear the rooster out there, and how pessimism is contagious. How This same person also brought it up that it is contagious, that even in groups, they've observed that when one person is being negative, there's just something about it that it spreads to the group. And like, let's say one person put their goals out there and dreams out there and they're wanting to do it, but this one negative person starts chiming in. They observed that the group can shift and become very negative, very pessimistic towards that person. And then the person who maybe put their dreams and their heart out there for whatever it might be begins to either change their point of view or they stay silent. And when, he wrote that back to me, I was like, you know what? That's true. I've noticed that too. That kind of that whole, effect of, I don't know if you want to say like peer pressure or the, mob effect, whatever you want to call it, where there's a group of people and they all start to affect each other, is real. And just how contagious pessimism is, how far it can reach. So, and then I had another good friend, she texted, she goes, "You know what? Naysayers, they just come across your path. You cannot control it no matter what. It's inevitable that you are going to come toe to toe with somebody who's going to just speak doubt in your life, who's going to be very pessimistic about things, who will poke holes in your plans. Be a naysayer." So, what's interesting, and there was, I mean, I got a lot of responses, and I kind of put it all into categories. There's the people who really let it affect them, and there's the people who said, "Well, it kind of frustrated me and angered me," which still affected them, but it made me motivated to work that much harder at whatever that goal was. So, some people feel the doubt and they begin to question their abilities. Some people get motivated to work harder. Some do both. Like my friend Casey said, I used to be like, you know what, watch me, I'll prove you wrong. And then maybe seasons in your life come in and you start to feel the doubt. You start to realize, wait a second, you're taking in more of what they're saying than you ever have. And then it's an ebb and flow. And then it can come back and you'll be like, you know what, I'm not listening to that anymore. So there isn't a clear cut answer. And I wasn't looking for one. I actually did not expect it to be this is what happens and everybody's on the same page. I knew people were going to be all over the place just from being in life. I'm 45 years old and life in general, being around people, but also being a teacher, a counselor, and then becoming a life coach. I definitely know everybody's usually on a different page about topics, and it's because it comes from their own experiences. So I wasn't looking for a clear cut answer. And the people I asked all came from different walks of life, all different beliefs. And it had nothing to do with in their particular, I mean, like, well, if they all had this belief, they all believe this thing. If they all came from this walk of life, they believe this thing. It was all so different. It was very interesting. So, pessimism, definitely. All that being said, and guys, there's more rolling, and I still have people messaging me going, "Oh my gosh, is it too late?" And no, it's not too late because I might do like a part two. In fact, I think I might as I'm sitting here thinking about this. Pessimism definitely has an effect on people, whether it stirs up frustration or anger, and then that turns into determination. You know what? Like, watch me, see what I can do. And I'm going to say I've been on both sides of it. I've been where, you know what? I'm going to prove them wrong. And then I've been on the side where I just, you know what? They're right. And I just totally believe everything they said. So it can stir up frustration or anger, turns to, into determination. And it isn't, whether it be that or you take it all in, you soak it in and you stop what you're doing. It isn't something that you ignore. Pessimism is not something that, well, that's just a part of life, and we just forget it. No, because it will have its effects on you. Naysayers can have a long-term effect on people. I've worked in healthy environments, and then I've also worked in environments that were, I mean, to say the word that's overused, toxic and detrimental to my mental and my emotional health. I worked in both. And the pessimism, I'm telling you, after working in places like that, it is something that you do not ignore. I know people personally that are still recovering from childhoods where the majority of the time they were told they couldn't do anything right. Or the fear of failure. If you do that, you're just going to fail. Why even try? Fear of failure, fear of even trying. in life. That was the name of the game. And so they're into their mid to late 30s. Some of them are in 40s, even older, and they're still trying to untangle all that pessimism, all that fear that was spilled into them, and then they allowed it to just create so much doubt in so many aspects of their life. And once we are around people that have spoken doubt, fear, anger, and frustration into us, what happens? And this is when I talk about in the title of the decay of pessimism is that we begin to speak that into other people. Once we're around it, if we are not able to see it and recognize it and keep a check on it, we begin to speak that same pessimism, the negativity starts to spill out of us. Maybe not intentionally. Maybe we don't even realize we're doing it because we've been immersed in it so long, but maybe we do. I do know, I will say, in my own life, in my own experience, if I just have a day where I just feel kind of blah and I can just tell I'm kind of negative towards people, that I can tell when I'm saying it, it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be that way. It's just like I'm saying, I'm like, ooh, I am in a bad mood, or today's been a day I'm kind of just being short with the people around me. It doesn't feel good. More so now because I'm much more aware of it. But even back then, before I really started diving into this, all the life coaching, all the stuff, right? So how do everybody out there, anybody just like listening to this in the car, while you work out, while you're doing the things at home, all the stuff. How does somebody who's not a life coach become aware of this without going through all the training and all the teachings and all the things that life coaches go through to become certified? How do you become aware of it? So I'm going to just tell you basic info. You pay attention to your thoughts. I mean, if you were to grab a sheet of paper right now and write down all the thoughts that you've had today, maybe just in the last hour, or maybe even since this podcast started, or even in the last few days, maybe in this last week, what would it look like? What would that piece of paper say? Do you think it would be geared more towards the positive side of things or negative? Now, I understand you might be like, well, Carrie, hang on. It's been a rough week, been a little bit more negative than I'd like to admit. I get it. I understand. However, that is what this is all about. Getting the thoughts in order, even when the seasons of life come in and just feel like we're trying to keep our head above water. I said that yesterday in my rooster. It's not even my rooster, but whatever. On the Instagram stories, I said that yesterday about sometimes you just have those seasons in your life where it feels like you're just trying to keep your head above water. So pay attention to your thoughts, people. If you're looking at that piece of paper, if in your brain you're like, ooh, and that's actually a very good exercise, write down all the thoughts, see where you're at, kind of like a barometer of like, okay, where am I at? So what do you think it would look like? Would you be surprised by all the thoughts that you're writing down? Would you be surprised by maybe the amount of negative thoughts or maybe even positive? Maybe you think you're negative and and you're not as negative as you think. Whatever. Do you even want to know what your thoughts are? Does the thought of doing that kind of scare you because you're afraid to see what it is? Guys, we all need to check our thoughts. I'm going to say that again for those of you in the back row. If you didn't hear me, we all need to check our thoughts. And I know you're like, well, okay, Carrie, you're a life coach. I'm a life coach. And that's what I get paid to do, right? Check thoughts, check other people's thoughts. But you can't have a life coach around you 24/7. And even here at home, I don't life coach people in the house. That's not how it works. Because for one, it takes a different type of awareness to do that. But how do you become more aware of it? Right? It doesn't take a life coach. It doesn't take me sitting here to tell you that your thoughts about the everyday things around you, about your circumstances, the people in your life, the choices that the people in your life make. Ooh, ouch. Did I step on any toes there? That this all matters. Are you pushing pessimism on others? Are you a pessimism pusher? Like, I know that sounds corny, but it could kind of make a cool t-shirt. I don't know. But after all, it doesn't take me to tell you this because the first time, I mean, God was the first to tell us that our thoughts matter. The Bible talks about our thoughts, talks about this. In 2 Corinthians 10:5, we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. I mean, I'm just pulling one of the most common verses out that talks about our thoughts. So I'm going to pivot slightly here. What if you are surrounded by pessimists and you have no choice that you're surrounded by them? It's not like, well, I'm choosing these friends. Like, what if those of you, if you're a teenager and you're out there listening to this, what if your family is just majority of them negative? They're pessimist. Their viewpoint on life is that of scarcity, a scarcity mindset. That is a coaching term. That means you only see what is lacking, never what you have, but what is lacking, what you don't have, coming from a place of fear. What if you're surrounded by that? What do you do? First off, get yourself in God's word. You can download the YouVersion app. I don't get paid by YouVersion, but you can download that app. There's several Bible apps out there. You can download it if you don't have a paper Bible in your home. Dive into his word. I know YouVersion has a ton of Bible studies based off of topic, based off the season you're in. You can pick one and go with it. You don't like that, get out of that one, try another one. Try one of those out to get yourself familiar, especially if you are not familiar with the Bible. If you're curious about it, don't be intimidated. God does not want you to be intimidated by his word. He wants you to know it is welcoming. It is for everybody because it was made for sinners and we are all sinners. So if you're unfamiliar with the Bible, Proverbs is a great chapter to start out with. Proverbs is one of my favorite. I've been reading the Bible for the majority of my life. And I love Proverbs. I still go back to it. It is a great chapter to start off on. It's in the Old Testament. If you have a Bible with the New and Old Testament, a paper Bible, it's kind of close to the center of the Bible. So there's so much wisdom in Proverbs. Lots of wisdom just spilled into those pages. And you will learn this wisdom just by diving into the word, just by reading, thinking about it. Write down a Bible, one of your favorite verses. If you read a verse and it strikes something in your heart, write it down and think about it. Meditate on that verse. And reading and thinking about it, you will begin to notice a change in your thought process. You will begin to notice a change in how you let the world talk into you and what you let come through, because you will begin to realize that you are a child of God, that you were woven with special talents and abilities. He knows how many hairs you have on your head. He knows more things about you than you do yourself. And because you are from him, you do not have to let the world talk to you that way. You do not have to let it sink in. It is your choice to believe it or not. And so diving into the word allows you to build on that foundation that you are his. And because you are his, whatever the world is trying to tell you, whatever it has told you, even if it's come from people that should have been the ones to love you the most, the deepest, and the hardest, even if it came from those people, understand that he loves you more than anybody on this world possibly could. And that's a lot, especially coming from a mom. When I think that God loves my children more than I could, that's a lot of love. And so I just want you to understand that there is, just by diving into it, what it can do for you, what it can begin to do for you. So, and you're going to start realizing I'm not going to quite believe what has been said to me in the past or what's being said to me now or whatever, I'm not going to let it happen anymore. So going to Proverbs, we're going to go to a verse from Proverbs. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life." So essentially, what you allow to be poured into your heart will pour out of it. And that is important to remember. So for my friends that do read the Bible, on a regular basis, or they consider themselves a Christian, and you find yourself in a dark place, a dark season in your life where you just feel the negativity spilling out of you. Maybe it's been poured into you and it's spilling out, or maybe all the fear, whatever's happening in your life, is starting to make that happen. You feel pessimistic about your life, about what surrounds it. What do you do? I want you to be curious about it. Don't shun it. I want you to look it in the eye, so to speak, and ask yourself, when did this begin? When did this start? You know, ask yourself, what am I listening? Be curious about, what am I listening to? Songs and podcasts, things. Are they good for me? Are they negative? What are you watching? The movies, the TV shows, all this. What am I pouring into myself, that could be contributing to this? Maybe you are walking through a harder season. What are you doing? What actions are you taking to help push back on letting the effects of that season, you know, whatever effects it could have on you, you know? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are trying to make you a better person, that make you want to be a better person, that encourage you and pour light into you? Or are you surrounding yourself with people that maybe don't have the best habits, or maybe bring you down? Really take a look. And I'm not saying this is judgmental, like I'm hanging around this guy and I don't know about his habit. I'm not pointing fingers at anything. What I'm trying to say is it does matter what you surround yourself with. Slow down and talk to God about it. And this goes to anybody. Even if you've never cracked the Bible open, doesn't matter. God's not like, well, you have to read, all of the New Testament before you talk to me. It's not how it works. You can talk to him any time of day, and you can talk to him. It doesn't have to be a formal prayer. I said this, I believe, in my last episode. Slow down, just talk to him about it. He already knows. He knows what you're feeling in your heart and what you're battling. But if you tell him the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's what he wants. He wants to hear you talk about it. He just wants you to connect with him so bad. So, what actions can you take? Well, surround yourself with people who lift you up versus tear you down. Talk to a trustworthy friend, or maybe a leader at your church, or someone that you know that has will be able to pour good wisdom into you. Maybe you need less news in your life. Do you have the news going all the time? It's good to know what's going on in the world, but it can also bring us down very easily. So maybe less podcast talking about the world and all it entails. Maybe you need more quiet time. Maybe you need just to sit down for 10 minutes of your day and just sit and pray, sit and talk, sit and think about, be curious about the emotions that you're having. Really look at this. I mean, emotions, it's okay to be curious why you feel this way, because we're human. We're going to feel these things. Emotions, they're not bad. God gave us these emotions. So I don't see them as something bad and evil just because it's not happy and joy and all the good emotions, even the negative emotions. That right there, I mean, if we feel it, if God created us and to be able to feel it, there's a reason. They are so wise and they can tell us so much. But if we leave these emotions unchecked, if we're not curious about them at all, then we can start to feel diminished or worn down from them, as if our emotions are the ones running the show. And if this is something you're like, I don't really know where I stand. I feel like I'm okay in some areas, but other areas I'm hurting. And then, Carrie, you just said that you can't keep it contained. So the other area that I think is okay is going to start to hurt. Guys, if you want to know where you stand, there is a link in my show notes and in my bio, and it is called the Wheel of Abundance, and it's a life wheel assessment. And I didn't invent this wheel, but I did not invent this actual tool, but I did make this one my own for what I coach on, what I work on with my clients and one-on-one as well as group coaching. I even talked about this yesterday in my stories, but this is a great tool to use. It's free. It's a PDF. You just print it out and you fill it out, you shade it in, and it allows you to see, and it asks you about different areas of your life and you rate it. Like, where are you on this? And it is a great tool for you to see and think about, as well as a visual to see the different aspects of our life, where you are at. And you'll see the areas that you're thriving and the areas, the ones in which you aren't. And this is going to help you as you try to climb out of this river of misery. It is a great tool for everyone, no matter if you're riding cloud nine right now, or if you feel like you're just surviving your day to day life. Get it, download it, you can use it. Rule of thumb is every 90 days. I've had people use it every 30 days, every month to see where they're at. And I'm telling you, it is an incredible tool because when I first used it, I thought, okay, well, give it a shot and see what it's like. I was blown away by actually what it said about where I was in my life. And that gave me a chance to see what do I need to work on, especially as I dive in with my life coach. So I use it with my clients. And then I'll tell you what, even after I became a certified life coach and started coaching women one on one, there's been times, seasons in my life. I'll tell you what, be honest, after my dad passed away, when I did the life wheel assessment, when I did this wheel of abundance, I I I did it and I started noticing there was some areas in my life I was starting to let go because I was in the grieving process. And with that, I was starting to let things slip. And it was not a tool to make you feel bad, like, oh my goodness, this part of my life, I'm not that. No, it just allows you to be aware of it, to become aware of the areas that, oh, that explains why I feel this way. That explains why I'm doing these things. It helps give you a good baseline to work from. And it is just a tool for you, right? So, like I said, I use it with my clients. It gives them assessment as to where they are, how they're being affected, and especially if they're walking through a tougher season. And it is not to scare or alarm, but instead is to help you feel, um, to find more clues as to what is going on with you. Like, like I said, that explains what's going on. I mean, especially right now, if this podcast is like, oh my goodness, like the effects of pessimism, like I'm feeling it. Maybe I've had a rough season, but now I just feel really negative and I'm just spewing negativity out on everybody and I don't like it. And then I feel more negative about it. So it's just this vicious cycle. Download this, fill it out, see where you're at. Write down all the thoughts, look and see what your thoughts are, and be curious. So write down the thoughts, be curious, dive into God's word, talk to him like you're talking to a friend, like he is your friend, like sitting across, having some coffee, from him, just like he wants to hear it. And this will help you break that cycle of pessimism, that cycle of negativity, because it is extremely contagious and it is detrimental. And the decay of pessimism goes very far because we will pass it on. And then the people around us become more negative, whether it be people at work or people at home. It has a very, very far reach. So the Wheel of Abundance, people, go get it. It's on my show notes as well as in my bio on Instagram and Facebook. I'll tell you what, it's a very simple yet impressive tool, and it is eye-opening to find out where you're standing and like what actions it helps you figure out what actions can I take to get myself out of this cycle. I needed it, and we all need one of these. So if you find yourself in this, remember your thoughts do matter. I know you're like, Carrie, you're a life coach. Of course, you have to say that, but I'm telling you, God talks about it. Take captive every thought. Guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. So, if you find yourself in this cycle, what I want you to do is take these steps, take action on it, be curious about it, dive into God's word, write down your thoughts, and just see what you can do to stop the negativity where it's at so it no longer has to be passed on. So, guys, thank you for your time. Like I said, you can go to my show notes, find that in there, um, and get that wheel of abundance. There's also a bunch of other freebies there that you can find if you get in there and you're like, oh, lots of good tools that I use for my clients that I use myself when I'm getting coached, um, and I wanted to pass on to you. So I hope you guys are having a great week. If not, if this is one of those days you just feel a little bit down, I hope this spoke some wisdom and hope into you. That is why I do it. All right, guys, have a great one. Until next time.